and sanitations. I am Dan Williams, and tonight I am unsuccessfully streaming the vice presidential debate. I was hoping to have it streaming live, uploading, but it's not working. I don't have enough signal. Hopefully, I'll have enough signal to even watch the thing. But we're going to record this and post it after the fact. So, CBS is starting up over here. So we'll see how this goes. Hopefully that's grabbing that.
And yet it continues to be the absolute lowest paying employer in the United States.
Barely anybody's making enough to live.
Don't really care right now about their commercials, so I'm gonna kill their commercials. Yeah, hopefully this will all be working at the right point. Let's do this vice presidential thing. A little explanation of my stuff here. I got my photos. I am a photographer, so here are my photos that I've taken.
Vice presidential candidates Mike
There are links in the description below. My web host is InterServer. It is cheaper than Squarespace, much more storage, so much better than Squarespace, so much cheaper. And InterServer, I use promo code WilliamsRDan to get your first month for channel logo. And I have seizures, so throughout the evening, smoking some cannabis.
The president released a nearly 5-minute video from the White House.
Boy, this stream of the vice presidential debates hopefully won't be as chaotic as last time. As
several days, I think, to show that he is well and that he is back in the job, even though his doctor.
Yeah, let's see what they're doing over here for a bit. I gotta turn over my steak.
Though we don't know if he is fully healed, he is certainly trying to project that image that he is well. Certainly his symptoms have improved. His doctors have acknowledged as much, but I think this is just to stay out in front of the American people. And so this message tonight was simply another continuation of the president even suggesting that this was a gift of God, that he got the coronavirus. So interpret that as
That's
but again, the
crazy.
continuing to try to project, this image of strength as he recovers from the virus.
Well, Caitlin, since President Trump took office, Vice President Pence has largely stayed out of the spotlight. What should we expect from him tonight?
That's right. At vice presidential debates, you typically expect the candidate to play this kind of fierce defender, this attack dog role. But in the Trump administration, the roles have really been reversed, with Donald Trump going on the attack often and Mike Pence kind of serving as the calming, more moderating force, or at least attempting to. And so I think what we'll see from Pence tonight is
Trump's so chaotic.
Do a couple of different things. First, trying to paint Kamala Harris as a figure of the far
Yes,
left.
I am anti-Trump because Trump is a rapist and a pedophile, and we've known this since the 90s.
Through Kamala Harris. And the reason that they want to do that is because they're trying to reach out to disaffected
Why
Republican
people
voters,
support him.
voters who say they don't like the president's behavior, they don't like how
He's
he acts and what he says, and that was demonstrated
a
at the
vile
debate last week.
person.
So Mike Pence has served in this administration to be kind of the conduit to those types of Republicans,
Pence
traditional
that well,
Republicans, trying to win them
other
back.
than
And you can expect that he will do that by trying to
have
Harris.
this
Well, Nicole,
issues
in
being
her
around.
4 years in the Senate, Kamala Harris gained a reputation
Women be
as a
alone
tough
with other
question,
women,
drawing on
something,
her history as a prosecutor.
he doesn't want to cheat on his wife. other
Well, I
women.
think you're going to see
I
a
guess
mix of
that's
that. I mean,
the ordeal.
anytime we have seen Senator Harris on the debate
Strange
stage,
man.
oftentimes she has
Much
been
like a
very
kid. That's
pointed, and
sweet.
even in her
From
rollout as
such a
the
yellow
vice
light.
presidential nominee, she has
It's
had this
terrible.
very firm
No.
stance when it comes to speaking about the administration and what the Biden
It may be a
campaign
little bit
sees
better.
as its
Still
failures,
very grainy
namely on this
was the
pandemic and namely with
laptop
regard to COVID. So I think you will see a continuation of that on the debate stage. To what extent she takes aim at the president's response in particular, especially as he is recovering from the coronavirus, remains to be seen. I asked her chief of staff earlier today if she will be sensitive to that factor, really take a harder stance. And even some on her team have been critical of the way the president has handled himself in the days as he has, tried to recover from this virus. So I think that is certainly one area to watch this evening.
Well, Caitlin, since John Adams first held the office of vice president in 1789, 14 of 47 VPs have gone on to become president. Regardless of who wins in November, are Pence and Harris the likely favorites for their party's next open nomination?
Well, Lane, that bit of trivia has actually become more interesting to people over the past couple of days, with the president having been in the hospital for coronavirus. It raised questions about the line of succession, what happens when a president is incapacitated, and it has placed a bigger spotlight on these vice presidential candidates, certainly tonight in this debate. And so that is a factor, but also a factor is that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are older candidates. This has also placed more of a spotlight on the number two than it may have otherwise been if the top of the ticket were younger. And so tonight could be seen as a show of what the future of these two parties look like and what they represent. Kamala Harris, certainly by being a historic choice, first black woman nominated to be vice president. When Joe Biden was going through that selection process, he said that the person that he picks, he wants it to be kind of a bridge to the next generation of the Democratic Party.
Then you should have let
All right, Nicole Killian and Caitlin
or Andrew Young or
previous vice presidential
Booker. I
debates
don't know.
have historically done little to influence the outcome
I have
of
nothing.
a presidential election. But the current situation in our country means tonight's meeting between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence could take on greater significance.
Some
The nation's top infectious
battles
disease
she's had
expert, Dr.
where she's
Anthony
been
Fauci,
prosecutor.
is warning that coronavirus deaths in the U.S. could nearly double to 400,000 by the end of this year. New cases have risen in the past 2 weeks in 30 states and the District of Columbia. The Midwest and Great Plains are becoming hotspots. President Trump's own treatment for COVID-19 is also calling attention to the role of the vice president, as Caitlin said, the line of succession. As we mentioned, the next president, whether it is Donald Trump or Joe Biden, will be the oldest in U.S. history. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and Senior Advisor to Hillary Clinton, Philippe Reines, joins me now. Philippe, thanks very much for being with us. So millions of Americans we know have already made up their minds and voted. How does that change the dynamic of tonight's debate and the race overall?
Well, thank you for having me. It's hard to say. I mean, it's
ballot.
We all say debates don't matter. People haven't
or
changed
mail-in
their
ballot.
minds, so people made up their minds. But you know what? If either Mike Pence or Kamala Harris were to turn in a particularly terrible performance, I think we would probably see a test to whether or not debates do or don't matter. So at the very least, you want to hold serve. You don't want to go out there and give your opponent anything to latch onto in any kind of meaningful way. But it is hard to imagine how in 90 minutes either of these folks do much to lose or win their races. We're talking about 26 days away from Election Day, and millions of people are already voting. It takes something pretty titanic, and I'm not supposed to say it because the whole jinx thing that I lost in 2020, and we all got it wrong. But Donald Trump is this race. I don't know by how much. I don't know when it's going to happen, but he's going to lose this race. And he's losing it for the very reasons that if you just turn on the debate tonight and turn the sound off, You are seeing plexiglass in between the nominees.
Oh, cool.
You are seeing nobody really there except 60 people spaced apart. Americans are dying. The country is in absolute terrible shape. There's not much Mike Pence can do to make anyone forget that. And the fact that he's even going to try is a sign of the problem that the Trump team has.
So let me ask you a little bit more about that, Philippe, because as you note, and we're seeing there a video of those plexiglass dividers.
You convince people that don't believe that the coronavirus is real that the coronavirus isn't real.
It is a reminder, a visual reminder of the coronavirus pandemic that Americans are living
They're already delusional.
right now. The vice president is frequently used, as you well know, to defend or sell the administration's policies. Also, though, he has been a vocal critic of those who disagree with the president. So how does all of that, Philippe, play into Senator Harris's strategy, you think, for tonight?
Well, you know, Senator Harris is well capable to dismantle Mike Pence. I think what's most important for Senator Harris and for
File back and then replace with clones.
I know they already know. Kamala Harris does not need to Mike Pence.
It's not.
She could go out there and she could eat a sandwich or catch up on, you know, her streaming on her
Very good friend that believe.
and that's fine. Just don't do anything. She doesn't need to win the game. I'm sorry for all the sports analogies, but it's a very big difference with Mike Pence. And you have to remember, this is not a Harris versus Pence debate. Yes, those are the human beings.
They're hogwash.
But this is Trump versus Biden. Kamala Harris is debating Donald Trump. Mike Pence is debating Joe Biden. And the more that they get into it as each other, that's really sort of pointless, the same way as it was pointless last week when Biden and Trump were not talking to the viewers, they were talking to themselves. Now, Pence is a very different animal. He's incredibly disciplined. He is relentless, and he's far more effective and far more vicious than people realize. He relishes going on the attack. He is going to take everything that when Donald Trump said that it sounds strange or off or blatantly a lie, and it's going to come out of his mouth and sound far more compelling. And he's going to say it in a way that's going to be much harder for it to linger. For instance, I think everyone listening to this conversation right now should ask themselves, without using Google, what is the thing I remember that Mike Pence said that he really shouldn't have said? And I knew I was going to ask myself that question, and I can't even answer it. Mike Pence does not make the biggest mistake Mike Pence has ever made was taking this job. But while he had the job, he's not someone that makes unforced errors. His problem, which is Kamala Harris's really way to go tonight, is that Mike Pence doesn't see anything that Donald Trump has done as a mistake. He, for all intents and purposes, has always stood next to, and all these
Let's see. The tax cuts, which cost jobs and caused.
And that's how you go after Mike Pence. It's not trying to gotcha Mike Pence.
And
this is not a commentary on Senator Harris, because I would in no way want to debate her. But I also wouldn't want to debate Mike Pence, and I wouldn't want to go at him.
A lot of farmers lost farms and
some moment where I'm going to get to. I would talk to the camera, and I would say, "Look, I'm sitting next to someone who I'm sitting next to Donald Trump. I'm sitting next to the person who didn't even want to be separated. You know what, Mike? I don't want to have plexiglass between us either. But the reason we are is because you guys can't get this straight."
So, Philippe, I want to play some of Senator Harris questioning some Trump nominees. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
Judge, have you ever discussed Special Counsel Mueller or his investigation with anyone?
Well, it's in the news.
Have you discussed it with anyone?
With other judges, I know.
Can you give me a yes or no answer,
in the
please?
closed briefing, well, it's not a short answer, Senator. The answer
It is either you are willing to do that or not.
Attorney General Barr, has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no?
Could you repeat that question?
So, Philippe, of course, it is one thing to be asking the questions, it is another to be fielding the questions. And according to the Washington Post, Senator Harris has not debated a Republican since 2010. Given what you just said about Vice President Mike Pence, the message discipline, the adherence to an attack line, and the effectiveness, you say, with which he is able to deploy those lines, what would be your counsel to someone like a Senator Harris who doesn't have that same level of experience in the debate arena as someone like Vice President Pence?
Well, first let me just point out, I think in a weird way, it's harder to debate people in your own party than it is people in the other party. Because when she's on stage with Mike Pence tonight, she knows she disagrees with him just about everything under the sun except what day of the week it is, and maybe even that. When you're on stage and you're debating, say, Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or Pete Buttigieg, you're kind of, you agree so much more than you don't, and you have in your mind like, oh, I like this person, and I might have to work with this person. They might work for me. I might work for them. So I don't think it's easy. I think her debate performances and her debate that she participated in last year during the primaries is actually very, very good practice.
Or Andrew Young,
But
really.
I think what she needs to do is, what you just showed, there might be a moment like that tomorrow where it's her saying, Mr. Vice President, please answer my question. I have a feeling if you're showing that video tomorrow morning, it's because Mike Pence had a good answer and that the moment didn't work. And again, this is not to say that Senator Harris can't pull it off.
Survives this,
you shouldn't try.
and
because
then
the
can
way to
get
get Mike
some
Pence is not a
good
gotcha. It is not a Senate hearing. It is not the same. He will be prepared. He will make it sound like, maybe we've been giving Trump
the old people that we've had before.
He's going to put their best foot forward. He's going to put the best
Old
argument
Bernie
forward.
was the best one, though.
Forward,
Yeah, socialist.
forward that Donald Trump doesn't even know, let alone make in any kind of coherent way. So,
stuff that we already did in the U.S. Not Nazi Germany socialism. Not
Donald Trump in absentia, and Mike Pence just happens to be sitting there because there's a difference between saying, your moderator,
Norway, Denmark,
Vice President,
Sweden, the UK, Canada, or the US from the 30s through the 70s. US was the most socialized nation.
Turn to him and say that to him, he's going to knock it out of the park. There's nothing you're going to get out of Mike Pence thinking that you're going to catch
on society's
He's a
growth,
machine, and I really don't think anyone
on having a sustainable economy that works in a circle instead of just flowing in one direction like the game of Monopoly. It doesn't work. When there's an end game, it doesn't work. You don't want an end game in the real world.
On Senator Harris to land some kind of knockdown. Senator Harris just needs to do exactly what she does every day, which is what Vice President Biden does. Talk about what they are going to do, hopefully starting in only a few months from now. Mike Pence is the one that's got to shake things up. I mean, from what I'm seeing reported, Mike Pence wants to talk tonight about terrorism. About terrorism. I mean, what year is he living in that he's going to that barrel of Republican tricks that he's going to go after Joe Biden on terrorism? I mean, that's not even the top 5 issues that people are talking about or worried about now. He thinks that he's going to knock COVID off the stage and off the headlines by talking about terrorism. I think that's the biggest acknowledgement that they know that nothing is working.
Philippe, 2020, of course, among many other things, has been a time of racial reckoning in this country. What does the fact that Senator Harris is a woman of color, how does that factor into the expectations of Senator Harris? How does that factor into the strategy of Mike Pence as he approaches this
Tonight's hot sauce.
Senator Harris? And how does that
Marie
factor
Sharp's
into
habanero.
voters' evaluations of Senator Harris's performance?
Well, it's a great question. Honestly, working for Hillary for so long, and especially during the debates in 2016, I'm well aware of really how many pitfalls and how 100 million people you watch for 100 million different things. That said, I want to take a very positive look at it and say, I think when that moment first comes up at 9 o'clock, when Kamala Harris, the first black woman on a major party ticket, comes out.
See if we can get around all the facts in
The
this
fact
state.
that she's next to a guy that is so white, he's almost clear, is going to make that even more so. In terms of their interactions, I don't know. I could see Mike Pence not looking like he's really comfortable talking to someone of the other sex. But I don't. I think they, as humans, are going to be living their lives in what they say without having to say it. And not to give him the benefit of the doubt, I think Mike Pence probably has practiced a lot this past week, I guess, with former Florida Attorney General Pam Biondi as one of the people playing Kamala Harris to not mansplain, to not be idiotic. I do find, not to be particularly snotty about it, but the fact that the Republican Party, can't find a black woman to play a black woman to help a white guy get used to being on stage with a black woman is really pretty telling. But that said, I think...
Does that matter, Philippe?
Yeah. I mean, Mike Pence,
Why?
this is about relating to people. These are two people that, look, they're vice presidents. So, again, if the presidential debates aren't moving the needle, this one won't either. But, yes, it's different. Kamala Harris, because of the age of her, hopefully, boss, it is more relevant. Pence's boss was in the hospital 2 days ago and, still on meds and whatever else is going on. So everyone's mortality is more on stage. You do want to get to know these people, and you want to see how they interact with others around them. I mean, for Mike Pence to ever win, and this is just about tonight, if Mike Pence wants to be president of the United States, he's going to run for president of the United States in 2024, no matter what happens on election day. He's the odds-on favorite to do so, to seek his party's nomination. He's going to need to relate to a whole lot of people other than other white males from the Midwest. And if he can't do that tonight, I do think in the back of people's minds, especially political insiders, they're going to say, well, Mike Pence went out there and did the best job he could, but Donald Trump just downed him with too much baggage to help him win this election. But Mike Pence, he's only 60 whatever. Come 2024, he's going to run, and we can see why X people do like him or X people don't like him. And I think that's something he can do a little bit about tonight. But he's a machine. I mean, he's going to go after her, I think, irrespective of gender, in a way that I almost respect. I mean, if the sense is, if the criteria is you treat someone different because of race or gender, I think Mike Pence, it is safe to say, he is going to be as much of a machine attack dog against her as he would be against a twin of himself. Now that might not be likable, but and it might not look great. But I do think her excitement. Look, she's electrifying. He's a wet blanket. So that's the true reality of the two of them as people and their backgrounds in the same place.
Hopefully I can eat any of this steak.
So there's nothing exciting about, oh my God, look, there's another white guy on stage tonight. I mean, I'll be like, why isn't there?
Well, I would imagine some Trump supporters would disagree very strenuously with you on that point. Philippe Reines, Philippe, we are out of time. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your perspective with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Still to come, we will discuss Vice President Mike Pence's strategy for tonight with RNC Senior Advisor for Data, Katie Walsh-Shields. Stay with us. You're streaming Red and Blue.
I have as much experience in the Congress as Jack Kennedy did when he sought the presidency. I will be prepared to deal with the people in the Bush administration if that unfortunate event would ever occur.
Senator Benson.
Senator. I served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you know Jack Kennedy.
Battery.
Go to the ends of the earth right now.
I don't care. Darn commercials.
Reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
What's the idea of being a human being?
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
COVID has taken the lives of tens of thousands of Americans. Rural areas like this here in Navajo Nation are especially hit hard.
15 to 30% of our Navajo citizens don't have running water.
In any indigenous reservation, there is a shortage of physicians.
Native Americans are amongst the most vulnerable and hardest hit by COVID.
Yeah, the more we lose our elders to COVID-19, the more we lose our language and our way of life.
We need to bring awareness to the attention of Washington, D.C. and United States citizens that there is a need to focus on the first citizens of this country.
The natives. Because people that look like
In 60 years, we
we're
went
immigrants.
from about 100,000 factory workers to probably about 7,000.
U.S. that immigrate into the U.S. They're more native than we are.
The restaurant industry right now is
They're
one of
closer
the
to-
largest and fastest growing industries in America. And yet it continues to be the absolute lowest paying employer in the United States.
Barely anybody's making enough to live.
You're donating plasma to get by.
It's literally a slave wage.
I don't remember growing up like this. My mom didn't have to go to food banks. It's pretty sad.
We had a living wage for work.
Even really young kids are feeling
And
what's
affordable
going
housing.
on right now.
Cars,
How should parents
vehicles.
be talking to them about this whole
Come.
question of racial justice?
How do we embrace this moment and turn it into real change?
What we really must focus on is moving from protesting to policy.
Join Gail, Anthony, and Tony on CBS This Morning.
CBSN Los Angeles. Get local news, breaking news, anytime, anywhere.
It's easy to find us, and it's free.
Download the CBS News app on your favorite devices. CBSN Los Angeles, streaming 24/7.
You can watch CBSN 24/7.
We've got an amazing story to share with you.
I understand you have some breaking news.
How does it all play out?
It's quite an adventure here at CBSN.
It's been a day.
Governor Pence, let me ask you, you have said Donald Trump is, quote, thoughtful, compassionate, and steady. 67% of voters feel he is a risky choice, and 65% feel he does not have the right kind of temperament to be president. Why do so many Americans think Mr. Trump is simply too erratic?
Well, let me
Because he is
say
erratic.
First and foremost,
He's
that,
always been erratic.
Senator, you and Hillary Clinton would know a lot about an insult-driven campaign. And it really is remarkable. At a time when literally, in the wake of Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State, where she was the architect of the Obama administration's foreign policy, we see entire portions of the world, particularly the wider Middle East, literally spinning out of control.
They have always been. They've been since Reagan.
Today is a result of the failed foreign policy.
That's Reagan. No, Reagan's fault. Not Obama's fault. Reagan's fault. Reagan.
That was back in 2016 when Mike Pence was running for his first term on the Trump-Pence ticket. Now, as the incumbent vice president, Pence faces a different political landscape, a country gripped in a pandemic with a shaky economy. A senior White House official said the VP held 3 90-minute practice sessions ahead of tonight's debate. The practice sessions focused on several policy fronts. The White House source told CBS News that the vice president intends to focus an equal amount of time on domestic and foreign policy. Joining the vice
died
president
in
tonight
an
as his guests will be the parents of murdered ISIS hostage Kayla Newman.
The 4 died.
Katie
But
Walsh-Shields joins me now. She's a
was
senior
just
advisor
4.
for data at the Republican National Committee.
Bush?
And Chief of Staff
W.
at
Bush?
the RNC.
had
I'm really
11
glad
embassies and
thank you for
consulates
joining
attacked
us.
with over
That statement
60
from Mike
dead.
Pence in 2016, accusing the Clinton King ticket of
Each one of
the
those
Clinton campaign,
more
stands
than
in
4
contrast to the
dead.
presidential debate we saw just last week.
Yet nobody
There is,
talks
of course, a
about
difference in demeanor between
those
the vice president
11
and the
consulates
president,
and
but there's
embassies that
more
were attacked.
apparent daylight when it comes to policy. What do you think the mission should be for the vice president tonight?
I think the vice president, Senator Harris,
Personnel killed, unknown number of
in the U.S.
civilians,
Senate,
over
and that's
18
saying something in Senator
months.
Bernie Sanders. I think the vice president's going to hold
An
her accountable
18-month
for some of her
siege.
extreme liberal policies, the Green New Deal.
That's worse than
Medicare for
Hillary.
all,
It's far worse
etc.
than what
And
Hillary did.
have Senator answer those questions. The Senator's been incredibly evasive to the media. She's been very unavailable. She's not made herself available to press questions. And so the vice president's going to say, Senator Harris, please explain these incredibly liberal positions to the American public so they understand what a Biden-Kamala ticket looks like.
Do you think that we need
We knew
to
what
hear
Bernie
some
stood
specifics
for.
on policy
We knew
from
what
the vice president?
Elizabeth Warren stood for.
I think the vice president and the president
We knew
are
what
being specific about their policies. I don't
Andrew
think you can
Yang
find an
stood.
administration
Andrew
that's
Yang,
been
Andrew
more
Young, whichever it
transparent
was,
and open and available to the press
stood for.
than President Trump and Vice President Pence. And Vice President Pence is an incredibly skilled debater. I think he will be very
Knew what
transparent.
a lot of the
answer
candidates stood
questions
for.
exactly as
Biden's
President
kind
did,
of
last week
in the
his debate
middle.
against former Vice President Biden. But I think what you'll see with Kamala Harris is a dodging of issues. She doesn't want to answer questions. She doesn't want to try and explain to the American public why they should vote for the most liberal senator to be their vice president. And so I'm interested to see how she answers that.
All right, Katie Walsh-Shields, I'm so sorry we're out of time. Thank you for joining us. The first debate and only vice presidential debate between Mike Pence and Senator Harris is about to get started. Let's go to our CBS News Primetime Special.
Chance to choose a better future.
Senator Kamala Harris.
He failed to protect the American people.
President Donald Trump's actions saved
Sorry about that.
American lives.
We are here fighting for the soul of our nation.
The choice in this election.
Some fat went down the throat, some fat did not go down the throat.
Things change.
It's on.
Ugh.
The vice presidential debate.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell in the nation's capital with John Dickerson and Gail King, and we are moments away from the one and only vice presidential debate. You are looking at live pictures from inside the debate hall in Salt Lake City. Let's talk about the state of the race. There is new polling that shows Joe Biden expanding his national lead. And in the battlegrounds, Biden has a sizable lead in Pennsylvania, ahead in Iowa and Wisconsin, and tied with President Trump in Ohio. Vice President Mike Pence and Democratic Senator Kamala Harris arrived a short time ago, and this could be the most consequential vice presidential debate ever. A reminder, both candidates at the top of the ticket would be the oldest president in history.
President Trump, as you know, who is being treated for coronavirus and potentially still contagious, was in the Oval Office today, just days after being released from the hospital. Pence and Harris have both tested negative, and even before they take the stage, there is a clear divide literally between them. They will be separated by plexiglass and seated 12 feet apart instead of the normal 6. The Commission on Presidential Debates says everyone besides Pence, Harris, and the moderator, that's Susan Page, must wear a mask, and this time they are very serious.
Now, no one expects a repeat of the free-for-all that we witnessed at the presidential debate. It's not in the nature of either candidate. The vice president has done this once before. Senator Harris has not. But the first black and Asian American woman to run for vice president is a former prosecutor, and she delivered pointed attacks on Joe Biden at the Democrats' early debates.
This is going to be quite a debate ahead. There's no doubt about it. Let's bring in CBS's Nicole Killian. She is inside the debate hall in Salt Lake City and has been talking to representatives from each campaign. Good evening, Nicole.
Good evening to you, Nora. Senator Harris has been here for days preparing with close
Extreme,
aides.
but
Her
nice.
chief of staff tells me
It's a good bird.
that her main goal tonight is to speak directly to the American people and contrast what the Biden campaign would do compared to the current administration. Expect her to use her prosecutor chops to go after the vice president, especially on the pandemic. Don't forget, it was her team that insisted on these plexiglass barriers.
All right, Nicole Killian, thank you. Also want to bring in CBS's Paula Reed. She is quarantining at home after she was potentially exposed to COVID while covering the White House. Good to see you, Paula, and tell us what you know about the Trump-Pence campaign.
Good evening, Nora. Well, CBS News has learned that the vice president has participated in 3 90-minute sessions ahead of tonight. He's worked along with former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, who has played the role of Senator Harris. Now, these sessions have focused quite a bit on how to defend the administration's handling of coronavirus. The vice president, of course, heads up the task force, but most voters do not think it's gone very well. Nora?
All right, Paul Reed, thank you. The debate is about to begin, and no doubt coronavirus will be at the center. Let's bring in the moderator.
From the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, welcome to the first and only vice presidential debate of 2020, sponsored by the Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm Susan Page of USA Today. It is my honor to moderate this debate, an important part of our democracy. In Kingsbury Hall tonight, we have a small and socially distant audience, and we've taken extra precautions during this pandemic. Among other things, everyone in the audience is required to wear a face mask, and the candidates will be seated 12 feet apart. The audience is enthusiastic about their candidates, but they've agreed to express that enthusiasm only twice, at the end of the debate and now when I introduce the candidates. Please welcome California Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Senator Harris and Vice President Pence, thank you for being here. We're meeting as President Trump and the First Lady continue to undergo treatment in Washington after testing positive for COVID-19. We send our thoughts and prayers to them for their rapid and complete recovery and for the recovery of everyone afflicted by the coronavirus. The two campaigns and the Commission on Presidential Debates have agreed to the ground rules for the night. I'm here to enforce them on behalf of the millions of Americans who are watching. One note, no one in either campaign or at the Commission or anywhere else has been told in advance what topics I'll raise or what questions I'll ask.
That was all fact.
This 90-minute debate will be divided into 9 segments of about 10 minutes each. I'll begin a segment by posing a question to each of you, sometimes the same question, sometimes a different question on the same topic. You will then have 2 minutes to answer without interruption by me or the other candidate. Then we'll take 6 minutes or so to discuss the issue. At that point, although there will always be more to say, we'll move on to the next topic. We want a debate that is lively, but Americans also deserve a discussion that is civil. These are tumultuous times, but we can and will have a respectful exchange about the big issues facing our nation. Let's begin with the ongoing pandemic that has cost our country so much. Senator Harris, the coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records. Even if a vaccine is released soon, the next administration will face hard choices. What would a Biden administration do in January and February that a Trump administration wouldn't do? Would you impose new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots? A federal mandate to wear masks? You have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Thank you, Susan. Well, the American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. And here are the facts. 210,000 dead people in our country in just the last several months. Over 7 million people who have contracted this disease. 1 in 5 businesses closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers. We are looking at over 30 million people who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing. On January 28th, the vice president and the president were informed about the nature of this pandemic. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne. And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew, and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it. The president said you're on one side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger if you don't. And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan. They still don't have a plan. Well, Joe Biden does. And our plan is about what we need to do around a national strategy for contact tracing, for testing, for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free for all. That is the plan that Joe Biden has and that I have, knowing that we have to get a hold of what has been going on, and we need to save our country. And Joe Biden is the best leader to do that, and frankly, this administration has forfeited their right to re-election based on this.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
Agreed.
Vice President,
I absolutely think
210,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 since February. The U.S. death
should
toll
have
as
to
a
forfeit
percentage of
and
our
walk away.
population is higher than that of almost every other wealthy nation on Earth. For instance, our death rate is 2.5 times that of Canada next door. You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is the U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy country? And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Because,
Thank you.
yeah.
And I want to thank the commission.
Because we ignored the rules.
Hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage with you. And our nation has gone through a very challenging
Well, it's just government control to prevent people from...
But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
No, we didn't.
Before there were more than 5 cases in the United States.
He mocked the whole thing.
Returned from China. President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy
Because it wasn't necessary to do.
Now,
And
Joe Biden
previously.
that decision. He said it was xenophobic and
Yes.
hysterical.
Yes.
But I can tell you, having led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national organization since World War II. And I believe
Didn't
it saved
help
hundreds
that
of
much,
thousands
but
of
I don't know.
American lives. Because with that time, we were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to
Should have
the
done.
delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resources and support they needed. And we began really before the month of February was to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way. And under President Trump's leadership, Operation Warp Speed, we believe we'll have literally tens of millions of doses of a vaccine before the end of this year. The reality is, when you look at the
Not necessarily a good thing because vaccines can be dangerous.
Task force is doing every step of the way. And quite frankly, when I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine, it looks a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about. This is a president who is
Melania Trump,
America first, and the American people,
quote,
I believe with my heart,
plagiarizing Michelle Obama's
sacrifices they
speech.
have made. It's saved countless
Biden's not a plagiarizer.
Would you like to respond?
Absolutely. Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked. When you're looking at over 210,000
Well,
dead bodies in our country,
It's hard to say what could have or what would have
families that are
been.
grieving that loss. And you know, the vice president is the head of the task force and knew on January 28th how serious this was.
A
And
smart
then, thanks to
decision.
Bob Woodward, we learned that they knew about it, and then when that was exposed, the vice president said, when asked, well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's get
No, but Susan, this is important. I want to.
He has to be
Mr. Vice
positive.
President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
You have 15 more more seconds, and then we'll give the Vice President a chance to
So I want to ask the American people, how calm were you when you were panicked about where you're going to get your next roll of toilet paper? How calm were you when your kids were sent home from school and you didn't know when they could go back? How calm were you when your children couldn't see your parents because you were afraid they could kill them?
Let's give Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President, you have 1 minute to respond.
You know, there's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one. And I want all of you to know that you'll always be in our hearts and in our prayers.
Whoop. That's great.
But when you say what the American people have
great
done
line.
these last 8
It's just
months
a line.
actually worked, that's a great disservice to the sacrifices the American people have made. But the reality, if I may finish that, the reality is Dr. Fauci said everything that he told the president in the Oval Office, the president told the American people. Now, President Trump, I will tell you, has boundless confidence in the American people.
Trump was anti-Fauci. He spoke against Fauci.
When Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and our medical experts came to us in the second week of March, they said if the president didn't take the unprecedented step of shutting down roughly half of the American economy, that we could lose 2.2 million Americans. Now, that's the reality.
Thank you.
They also said to us if we did everything right, Susan, we could still lose more than 200,000 Americans.
And he went around blabbing about how terrible it was that we shut things down.
American people, I believe, deserve credit for the sacrifices that they have made, putting the health of their family and their neighbors first, our doctors, our nurses, our first
Thank you, Vice President.
He's saying stuff that's not factual.
President, you were in the front row in a Rose Garden event 11
It's not
days
factual
ago.
at all.
It's been a super spreader event for senior administration and congressional officials. No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
Well, the American people have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know.
The guidelines.
President Trump and I have great confidence in the American people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice. In the height of the
They
epidemic,
didn't mocked it.
we were losing a heartbreaking number of 2,500 Americans a day.
Because your party people mocked. Or your party mocked all the restrictions.
When the outbreak in the Sun Belt happened this summer, again, Americans stepped forward. But the reality is the work of the President of the United States goes on. The vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States has come upon us, and the President introduced Judge Amy Coney Barrett.
Thank you.
It was terrible,
If I may say, that
way too conservative,
There's been a
and
great deal of speculation about it. My wife Karen and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested for coronavirus. And it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is President Trump and I trust the American people to make choices in the best interest of their health.
they don't. The American people doesn't make the best choices. We want our big gulp drinks and
All government control. We're about freedom and respecting the freedom of the American people.
Let's talk about respecting the American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth.
Yes!
You respect the American people when you have the courage.
Yeah,
Those things that you may not want
See that
to
reaction,
hear, but
Vince.
they need to hear so they can protect themselves. But this administration stood on information that if you had as a parent, if you had as a worker knowing you didn't have enough money saved up, and now you're standing in a food line because of the ineptitude of an administration that was unwilling to speak the truth to the American people. So let's talk about caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration. It is asking too much of the people. It is asking too much of the people. That they would not be equipped with the information they need to help themselves to protect their parents and their children.
Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, I'm sorry.
It's fine, I'm Kamala.
No, you're Senator Harris to me. For life to get back to normal, Dr. Anthony Fauci and other experts say that most of the people who can be vaccinated need to be vaccinated. But half of Americans now say they would take the vaccine if it was released now.
Happened throughout history.
If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it and
Plague
take
of the
it?
21st.
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it, absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Vice President Pence, there have been a lot of repercussions from this pandemic. In recent days, the president's diagnosis of COVID-19 has underscored the importance of the job that you hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president. One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president the United States has ever had. Donald Trump will be 74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back.
I think we can move on.
Well, thank you, but I would like to go back because the reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year. We have 5 companies in phase 3 clinical trial, and we're right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration, I think is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before
What he's been doing.
And we will have the capacity to save countless American lives, and your continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is just...
He is scary because he's actually stable. He's saying things that are wrong, but he's stable doing it.
We actually do know what
it's wrong.
Like in a pandemic. It was 2009. The swine flu arrived in the United States. Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year, when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu. 60 million Americans contracted the swine flu. If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus, in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million Americans.
Well, the lack of lethalness is why it wasn't reacted to.
That they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the strategic national stockpile empty. They left an empty and hollow plan, but we still learned from it. And I think
Trump didn't renew the stockpile.
Vice President Pence, I'm sorry,
what we have done. And Senator, please stop undermining confidence in a vaccine.
Senator,
2 minutes is not long enough. It needs to be 3 minutes, not 2. 3.
Have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So let me tell you, first of all, the day I got the call from Joe Biden, it was actually a Zoom call, asking me to serve with him on this ticket was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. I thought about my mother,
Whoop-de-doo.
Came to the United
Come
States
on,
at the age of
get to
19,
something substantial.
Gave birth to me at the age of 25 at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California.
Okay.
The thought that I'd be sitting here right now, I know would make her proud. She must be looking down on us. Joe and I were raised in a very similar way. We were raised with values that are about hard work, about the value and the dignity of public service, and about the importance of fighting for the dignity of all people. And I think Joe asked me to serve with him because You know, I have a career that included being elected the first woman district attorney of San Francisco, where I created models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected the first woman of color and black woman to be elected Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. And there I took on everything from transnational criminal organizations to the big banks that were taking advantage of homeowners,
Qualifications.
to for-profit colleges that were taking advantage of
Good qualifications here.
And then, of course, now I serve in the United States Senate as only the second black woman
During that
elected
tenure.
to the United States Senate. I serve
But-
on the Senate Intelligence Committee, where I've been in regular receipt of classified information about threats to our nation and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our soldiers in war zones. And I think Joe has asked me to serve with him because he knows that we share a purpose, which is lifting up the
veteran.
American people.
She's actually a
After the
veteran.
4 years that we have seen
She's a veteran.
Trump unifying
He's
our country around our common values and principles.
Thank you, Senator Harris. You know,
Half Dodger.
neither President Trump nor Vice President Biden has released the sort of detailed health information that had become the modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have given misleading answers or refused to answer basic questions about his health. And my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence, would you like to go first?
Well, Susan, thank you. And let me say, on behalf of the President and the First Lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of prayers and concern for the President. And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted by the coronavirus. But the care the President received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way will continue. The American people have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely grateful and was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you.
Still person.
As I did on that phone call.
Care about every
the
person.
historic nature of your nomination.
Because
I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago, so I know the feeling. But the reality is,
they haven't been treated as if all my lives matter, and that's why we have to now argue that black.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. I want to give Senator Harris a chance
Haven't
to respond to the same question I asked, which is, do voters have a right
They
to
all
know
do, and
more detailed
therefore
health
Black
information
Lives Matter
about
because
presidential
all
candidates,
lives
and
matter.
especially about presidents.
Cheers to Black Lives Matter.
Absolutely, and that's why Joe Biden has been so
39,000%.
certainly by contrast, the president has not, both in terms of health records, but also let's look at taxes. We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes.
There's some other stories, other things that maybe it's
$750,000, and it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody. And it'd be really good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, owes money to, because the American people have a right to know.
5 to 95, Trump is responsible for 2% of all civilian debt.
Is he making those decisions on the best interest
One
of
man
the people
responsible for 2% of all U.S. debt.
about transparency, because it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent over many, many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest, he is forthright. But Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to give you a chance to
Yeah,
respond.
Biden tells it like it is, too. He just says it honestly.
I respect your public service as well.
Thank you.
But the American people have a president who's a businessman, he's a job creator, who's paid tens of millions
Sued thousands of times for not paying.
payroll taxes, property taxes. He's created tens of thousands of American jobs. And the president said those public reports are not accurate. And the president's also released literally stacks of financial disclosures the American people can review just as the law allows. But the distinction here is that Joe Biden, 47 years in public service, compared to President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you, Vice President.
Turned this economy around.
Stop him right now, because he's about to lie.
Thank you, Vice President.
It's a lie.
Fighting for free and fair trade.
Lies.
Thank you, Vice
Lies.
President.
Lies. Lies.
You know, that's a good segue into our third topic, which is...
If I understood what he was saying,
This
right.
has been another aspect of life for Americans that's been so affected by this coronavirus. We have a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we learned that the unemployment rate had declined to 7.9% in September.
It's a problem with reliant, the society being reliant on jobs and employment work.
And elsewhere, hundreds of thousands of discouraged workers have stopped looking for work. Nearly 11 million jobs that existed at the beginning of the year haven't been replaced. Those hardest hit include Latinos, blacks, and women. Senator Harris, the Biden-Harris campaign has proposed new programs to boost the economy, and you would pay for that new spending by raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations. Some economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial ventures that fuel growth and create jobs. Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk? And you have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of the American worker and the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing, which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for.
And hundreds of thousands of jobs lost after his tax cuts for the wealthy.
He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that is about investing in infrastructure, something that Donald Trump said he would do. I remember hearing about some infrastructure week. I don't think it ever happened. But Joe Biden will do that. He'll invest in infrastructure. It's about upgrading our roads and bridges, but also investing in clean energy and renewable energy. Joe is going to invest that money in what we need to do around innovation. There was a time when our country believed in science and invested in research and development so that we were an innovation leader on the globe. Joe Biden will use that money to invest in education.
National parks.
So, for example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from a family that makes less than $125,000, you'll go to a public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that if you have student loan debt, it's cut by $10,000. That's how Joe Biden thinks about the economy.
That's not enough.
It's about investing in the people
That's
of our
not
country,
enough.
as opposed to passing a tax bill, which had the benefit of letting American corporations go offshore.
If you're going to forgive, if you're going to make future tuition free, then forgive past tuition debt. All of it, not just $10,000 worth, all of it.
Should Americans be braced for an economic comeback that is going to take not months, but a year or more? You have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression.
Wasn't that slow? We did it. We came out of Bush's recession. It did a damn good job.
President Trump cut taxes across the board. Despite what says, the average American family of 4 had $2,000 in savings in taxes. And
for 1 year, and then had to pay back more later.
Most predominantly for blue-collar, hard-working Americans. The average household income for a family of 4 increased by $4,000 following President Trump's tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day 1, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes.
No, for the super wealthy, not for the middle class, not for the 98% of Americans. You're lying, Mr. Vice President.
Added back 11.6 million jobs because we had a president who cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, fought for free and fair trade. and secured $4 trillion from the Congress of the United States to give direct payments to families, save 50 million jobs through the Paycheck Protection Program. We literally have spared no expense to help the American people and the American worker through this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion deal, which you were one of the
which will create
co-sponsors of in the United States.
The $3.2 trillion are jobs. It's money that's going to create jobs. How do you think that money is spent? Where do you think that money goes? It's jobs. You invest money into new industry to create jobs.
Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump
because it cost us. It hurt us.
Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot. With 4 more years of growth, opportunity, 4 more years of president.
Because 4 years of stagnation that we've had.
The biggest economic year in the history of this.
Oh, it's stagnation. We slowed.
Well, we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth and the fact is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000
He said he's
a year.
going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
$400,000. $400,000.
Be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden
$1,000. Specifics, not just these blanket.
That was tax cuts that gave the average working family
average
$2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
that is absolutely not true.
Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that.
Which I don't disagree with.
Joe Biden
we need to end fracking.
During the
fracking
session was responsible for the Recovery Act that brought America back, and now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit
for
when they wrote the
Biden did.
Of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand,
and it was before the
on the other hand,
COVID.
you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being
Republicans always screw up the economy.
On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable
Since
Care
Nixon.
Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families who otherwise were going bankrupt because of hospital bills they could not afford.
I benefit.
On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
Demanded we stay with the insurance companies.
If you have pre-existing conditions, and this is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
we need to give Vice President.
I'd just like to, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish, please. If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you.
Period.
If
you are a woman and you have a period, that's a pre-existing condition.
If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
Senator Harris, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, I hope we have a chance to talk about health care because Obamacare was a disaster.
Because insurance companies. The insurance companies made it a disaster. Profit made it a disaster.
Protect pre-existing conditions for every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for president that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a
which we need to. We need to.
Really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal. More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American.
This is bad for us. We can do better.
Is a prescription for economic decline.
No, it's a growth. We move forward and keep up with the rest of the world. If we stagnate, if we don't innovate, we will fall apart. We need to innovate and move forward.
which is climate change. And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. Well, first, I'm very proud of our record on the environment and on conservation. According to all of the best
It's been
estimates,
terrible.
Our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded, and our water is among the cleanest in the world.
Not by your.
And just a little while ago, the President signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks in 100 years.
Oil.
So President Trump has made a commitment to conservation and to the environment. Now, with regard to climate change, the climate is changing. But the issue is, what's the
naturally.
cause, and what do we do about it?
We are the
President
cause.
Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal,
Good.
which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that
More jobs creates new opportunities, cheaper,
in a cleaner environment
that
has
don't
been happening precisely because we have a
work
strong
to
free market
create.
You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation. And we've done it through natural
Because the
gas and fracking, which, Senator, the American people...
Trump for pulling us out of it, we're going to do it ourselves.
Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do.
Is they're going to try on their own.
Repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating the kind of American...
We need to ban fracking, though.
We're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires...
It's a bad
President
idea.
Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center, and even Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes,
Forest management. Dry out the forests even more. That's what it'll do. Pick up the rotting logs.
But many of the climate alarmists use hurricanes and wildfires to try and sell the bill of goods of a Green New Deal. And President Trump and I are going to always put American jobs and American workers first.
Senator Harris,
Well, there's a lot more jobs in green industries than
but Vice President Biden said
black.
in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the
Yarp.
Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump's. And part of those jobs that will be created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy.
Industries are more jobs.
Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has seen and talked with the farmers in Iowa.
Horseshoes and
whose entire
horseless
crops have been
carriages,
destroyed
or
because
horse
of
carriages.
floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the
Trump
committee
doesn't know
that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website and then took the phrase climate change off the website?
It's true. You can't shake your head to that, Pence, because it is true. Everybody knows it. It is fact.
We're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, you know, the science is telling us this, you know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat to us as human beings. Joe is about saying we're going to invest that in renewable energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan. This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate agreement with pride.
Senator Harris just said that climate change is an existential threat. Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Which affect people over 400,000.
Tax relief to the average family of four across America.
It's not the average family.
I just recommend that people look at the record. You yourself said repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You were the first Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Joe Biden denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for pointing out the Green New Deal is on their campaign website. And as USA Today said, it's essentially the same plan as you co-sponsored with AOC when she submitted it in the Senate. And you just heard the senator say that she's going to resubmit America to the Paris Climate Accord.
Which is good. We need to.
The American people have always cherished our environment. We'll continue to cherish it. We've made great progress reducing CO2 emissions through American innovation and the development of natural.
The only way to do that is with regulations properly. The way to do it.
$2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
We do. That's how we change. That's how we grow. Fix the problems.
Business buildings. It makes no sense. It will
It makes all sense. It will create more jobs.
Jobs first, and we're going to take care of our environment and follow the science.
But, you know, on the issue of jobs, let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. You lost that trade war. You lost it.
Yeah.
What ended up happening
Terribly.
is because of a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs. Farmers have experienced bankruptcy.
Bush gave tax cuts to companies that went overseas.
Recession because of it. And when we look at where this administration has been, there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration, they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people know what I'm talking about. You know, I think about 20-year-olds. You know, we have a 20-year-old, 20-something-year-old, who are coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me? We're looking at people who are
A job? How are you going to afford housing, pay off student loans?
Almost half of American renters are worried about
Welcome to the world. You're in debt. Yay!
End of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
And Bush.
President Pence, let me give you just 15 seconds to respond, because then I want to move on to.
Well, I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden fought it. Joe Biden's been a cheerleader for communist China over the last several decades.
What?
And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts.
Likewise, you.
Vice President, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs, and President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we need a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut down,
And you made it worse. And Trump made it worse.
This administration saw
Help.
500,000 manufacturing jobs created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring our nation through this pandemic. But a Green New Deal, your massive new mandates, your Paris Climate Accord, it's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
I just need to respond very briefly,
15
please.
seconds, and
Thank
then
you.
we'll move on.
Thank you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about China.
Yeah, the auto bailouts.
Next topic.
Pence was
We have
against.
no more complicated or consequential
A lot of Republicans were against the automotive bailouts.
It is a
But,
huge market for
no, we had to
American
do the
agricultural
too big to
goods. It's a
fail.
potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries?
Factor the economy to let the general populace fail.
Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records if I can. You know, everybody knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA. And the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. American people deserve to know Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs.
The whole environmental agenda. It's crazy to protect the planet. It's insane that we have to fight our government for our planet. What's the Adam?
More liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So now, with regard to China, look, Susan, first and foremost, China is to blame for the coronavirus. And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear, made it clear again today. China and the World Health Organization did not play straight with the American people. They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February. Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing
That's pretty
with China
early.
from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades in the wake of Joe Biden's cheerleading for China.
No, Bush.
President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's
Bush
decision to
allowed
suspend
all
travel
manufacturing
from
jobs to
China.
go to China.
He said it was hysterical. He said it was
Thank you, Vice President
xenophobic.
Pence.
But President Trump has
Vice President
stood
Pence,
up
your
to
time is
China.
up.
We're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold
Vice President
China
Pence.
accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me
They did
ask
to
you the
America.
same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors,
Whole was
adversaries,
affected.
enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan,
Don't let China do the manufacturing. Let us take other better jobs. Give us better jobs.
Has resulted
Let
in the loss of American
somebody
lives,
else take the shit
American
jobs.
jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President Biden. For example, they created within the White House an office that basically was responsible for monitoring pandemics. They got away, they got rid of it.
Not true.
There was a team of disease experts.
More true than things you've
that
stated.
President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out. We now are looking
Love the bees.
at
Save the bees.
210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. Let's look at the job situation. We mentioned before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of that failed
Not 300.
war that they called it.
It's 300 is nothing.
Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the president of the United United States, the commander-in-chief of the United States. This is where we are today.
Because Trump's a fascist. Fascism is worse than communism.
By this administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change. What's your definition? We've seen strains with China, of course, as the Vice President mentioned. We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So, you know, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, you know, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, you know, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships.
Yeah.
And so we know this in our personal and professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. Got to be loyal to your friends. People who stood with you, got to stand with them.
Yeah.
You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check.
I love my photography.
But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced.
The world is ashamed of us.
Let's take, for example, Russia. So, Russia, I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020.
Fake news.
Christopher Wray, the
Actual
director
fake news.
of the FBI, said the same. But Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You look at our friends at NATO.
This is a problem.
He's walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. We were in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies in one country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach,
because his arrogance and ignorance, because he doesn't know what is going on.
So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation, in addition to our great military, has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Thank you.
Because he's never been honest in his entire life. His whole career has been based on dishonesty.
Capital of the state of Israel. When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies.
Not the Israel thing.
NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia-Pacific, and we've stood strong.
What, with North Korea?
You know, when President Trump came into office, ISIS had captured an area of the Middle East the size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military and our armed forces.
Because Reagan gave them weapons.
And took down their leader, al-Baghdadi, without one American casualty. Al-Baghdadi
and almost brought us into World War III.
Thousands.
Reacted against that war crime.
The parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, 2 of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Mueller. Breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month.
This is not a story I know.
Finally went in. It was
I don't know this story.
2 days earlier. And her family says
I don't know.
A heart that broke the heart of every American. If President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice President.
We destroyed the ISIS caliphate.
This is hypothetical.
Talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. In the last last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor of terrorism. President Donald Trump got us out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad to do harm to Americans, President Donald Trump took
Thank you,
him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is safer, our allies are safer, and the American people know President Donald Trump will never have
Thank you, Vice President
take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length, because of course there are other topics we want to talk about.
But I would like equal time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq.
Yeah.
And
luckily we had enough warning to...
They suffered serious brain injuries, and do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches.
Well, okay,
and this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for them? Because of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it for him. Let's take
selfishness,
John
complete
McCain, a great
self-centered.
American hero. And Donald Trump says he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. This is very important when you want to talk about who is the current commander
I like
and what they care about and
troops
what they
that
don't
weren't
care about.
captured.
Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that. Joe Biden would, but Joe Biden would hold Russia to account for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are sacrificing their lives for the sake of our democracy and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we
And
have
a
other
woman who
important
is
issues
served.
as well. And I want to make sure we have a chance
I really have
to talk
to
about.
respond to that.
I'm
Look, she has
15 seconds because
Well, I gotta
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry, but Vice President,
Look,
but you've had more time than she's had so far.
The slanders against President Donald Trump regarding men and women of our armed forces are absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice
My
President
son is
Pence.
Fact, though.
United States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy.
Okay, well,
I can
Trump
assure
called
you
your son a loser.
With sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but
No, he
reveres
doesn't.
all
He
those
doesn't.
who serve in our
He
armed
doesn't.
forces and
He
any
does
suggestion
not.
otherwise is ridiculous.
Does not.
Vice President Pence, Vice President
Fraulein Draft Dodger does not respect the troops.
Pence, I did not, excuse me.
You can say it all you want that he does, but he doesn't.
Your campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's debate with the Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm here to enforce them, which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of you, which is what I'm trying very hard to do. So I want to go ahead and move to the next topic, which is an important one, as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court.
No, Trump has been
On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Yes. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make it likely open to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. Access to abortion would then be up to the states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do?
get rid of abortion.
Would you want
It's
your
just
home
going to
state
make
to
people
ban
do it
all abortions?
dangerously.
You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little
Punch
bit
to
of
the
my time to
stomach.
respond to that very important issue before. The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate, and Qasem Soleimani is gone. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take
Yeah,
Soleimani.
because it was done wrongly.
It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable. Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members.
I know the guy that was later medic to the doorkicker on the Osama bin Laden.
United States. Let me say, President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about the opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, she's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience and a sizable American family to the Supreme Court of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received with treatment from you and others,
Because he didn't deserve the job. He did get a fair hearing, and he was found unworthy.
Christian faith that we saw before.
It's not, you're not entitled to a judiciary.
Judge Barrett was being confirmed.
Not an entitled job. You have to earn it. Kavanaugh isn't worthy of that job. Nor is Amy, whatever her name is.
One of our judicial nominees, you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus. Just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views. And
Thank you, Vice President.
The Knights of Columbus have. Oh, yeah.
Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected.
Thank you, Vice President.
No.
Voted and confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States.
Senator Harris,
No,
you're
she's
the
not
senator
entitled
from
to the
former
job.
Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion? And you have 2 minutes.
No restrictions. I mean, it needs to be
Thank you, Susan. First of all,
discouraged.
Joe Biden and I are both people of faith.
Completely.
And it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith. And in fact, Joe, if elected, will be
Consequences
only the
are
second
worse.
practicing Catholic as President of the United States. On the issue of this nomination, Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 days before the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And before, when this conversation has come up, it's been about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has
I just
been
voted
very
today.
clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And
Like you made, like McConnell made Obama
the
do.
issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make
Be
a decision about
hypocritical.
her own body. It
Yeah.
should be her decision
This
and
too.
not that of
This-
Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look
Let
at
the
what else
women
is before
decide
the
this,
court.
not
It's the
women.
Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition.
Probably
because
more,
you
too.
contracted the virus. Donald Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections if they win for people with pre-existing conditions. This means that over
Whatever they want, they'll drop you as soon as you get sick. They won't cover it
it means that
if you actually need coverage. You have to pay out the wazoo, but not get anything back.
the contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public option or private coverage. Let's bring down premiums. Let's lower Medicare eligibility to 60.
Thank you, Senator.
That's true leadership.
Restrictions on who you can get.
Earlier, Vice President Pence said the president was
More
committed
food.
to maintaining protections for people with pre-existing conditions. But you do have this court case that you are supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that.
Gotta fix
And that
my
was one of the toughest
refrigerator.
notes to
It's
crack
not
when they were
working.
passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
No, come on.
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as Vice President to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it.
Whoa.
And this is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic
You know,
contrast.
there are sometimes medical conditions that require an abortion, such as an ectopic pregnancy, where if the baby's not aborted early, the mother could die.
Of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court.
A child or a teenager or somebody who's raped.
This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules,
It's not
you're going to change
choosing. You didn't choose to bring a child, a new life into the world.
I think the American people would really like to know.
You can't
if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is
safely
confirmed as
bring a
Supreme
new
Court of
life
the
into the
United
world.
States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court together?
Would you rather have that unwanted child born and
Let's do that a little more.
living
In 1861,
I'd like you to answer the question.
Mr. Vice President,
under
speaking.
terrible
I'm
conditions,
speaking.
where that soul gets tortured
In 1864,
in the life?
one of the, I think, political heroes,
I think it's
certainly the
better
president, I assume if you also, Mr. Vice President, is
do the
Abraham Lincoln.
abortions.
Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election,
Less
and it was
torture and
27 days before the election, and a
And
seat became open in
living.
the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people
God
deserve to make
is
a
sovereign, then he
decision
knows what
about who will be the
baby's
president
going
of
to
the
be
United
aborted.
States.
And
And then
always
that person
a soul
can
on
select
that
who will serve for a
baby.
lifetime
That
on the highest court of our nation.
so
And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people are voting right now, and it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body for a lifetime.
Thank you,
And
Senator
the
Harris.
people, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
And what about you, though?
Once again, you gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
The
now.
American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election. Men and women, I got to tell you, people across this
Conservatives that
country
are
who
going to be
cherish our
against
Supreme Court,
freedom.
if you cherish the separation of powers, you need to reject the Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that separation of powers in a 9-seat Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the
Please.
fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So the Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk about the issue of racial justice.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question. So I
Yes, you
think
did.
maybe the next debate, Joe Biden will answer the question, but I think the American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President. In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified
He's
themselves.
breaking into a train.
Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than
Hard to
20
that
rounds
officer,
into the
but
apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them
no,
have been
he
indicted
was acting in
connection with her
self-defense.
death.
The officers were attacked.
Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice
Burst into somebody else's home, you're the attacker.
I don't believe so, and I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family.
They're the attacker.
And her family deserves justice.
Sorry,
She was a
you
beautiful
deserve
woman.
whatever
She had
defense
her life
the
built upon
homeowner
her
does,
since she
takes
wanted to become
against
an
you.
EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street.
I respect police
So she could
officers. I've had good experiences with them.
save lives.
But
And her life was taken
to all police officers, don't be
unjustifiably
stupid.
and tragically and violently. And it just
Stupid,
it brings
don't be
me
evil,
to,
don't be disrespectful.
the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America
Dignity
witnessed,
to
during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country, of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was
liberty and justice for all. Why can't we just, any of them say this? Liberty and justice for all.
First of all, we are never going to condone
For
violence,
all.
but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We will require a national registry for police officers who break the law. We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform, get rid of private prisons and cash bail, and we will decriminalize marijuana, and we will expunge the records of those who have been convicted.
Criminalize
of
marijuana, please.
This is time for leadership on a tragic issue. Unarmed black people in America who have
Thank
been
you, Senator
killed.
Harris. Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system. A grand jury would refuse the evidence. And it really is remarkable that
Death is proof that the justice system doesn't work.
you would assume
So why do you
the
trust?
panel grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong, but you're entitled to your opinion.
Proved it doesn't work.
I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd, and justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed. I mean,
I'm sorry, there is. At this point, there is.
Flora is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to
People
be
like you didn't listen
her salon
50 years
was
ago.
burned to the ground by rioters
60s.
and looters. And Flora
200,
is still
400
trying to
years
put her
ago.
life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist, and that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities, is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day, President Trump and I stood.
Oh no. Oh, that's gonna be great.
Remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. Look, we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American neighbors and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done from day one, and is improve the lives of African Americans.
Oh, I can't wait for Colbert to
record investments in education, and we'll fight for school choice for all of our members.
Thank you, Vice President.
I'd like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who has personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big banks for taking advantage of America's homeowners. I'm the only one on this stage who prosecuted for-profit colleges.
Well, there's only 3 people on the stage, so.
And the reality of this is that we are talking about
It's in his hair.
27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
not true.
It wasn't like he
Yeah.
didn't have a chance.
Yes.
He
Yes.
didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said,
Yeah.
"I'm impressed."
You can't deny this, Pence. You keep denying things that Trump does, but he obviously does them.
This is a part of a
You deny the obvious
of Donald
truths.
Trump's. He called Mexicans.
He did that 4 years ago.
Criminals. He instituted as his first act a Muslim ban. He on the issue of Charlottesville, where people were peacefully protesting the need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed, and on the other side there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs. And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is
Yes,
how we
that's
have
what
the
he
President of
said,
the United
Pence.
States. In America, you deserve
Giant
better.
Pence.
Joe Biden will be a president
You're-
who brings our country together.
Oh, Pence makes me sick.
And recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the fact that we all have so much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan.
Did it point out obvious racism?
Just like Senator Harris did. Comments that President Trump and I and others on
The
this study
facts.
made. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate.
Oh yeah, because he was forced to
He
take it back.
condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and
He was
white
forced
supremacists,
to.
and has done
It wasn't
so
true. He wasn't mean it.
You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. This is a president who respects and cherishes all of the American people. But you talk about having personal...
He doesn't, though.
I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
I really need to make this point. When you
Doesn't show any respect.
in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics. When you were Attorney General of California, you increased the disproportionate incarceration of blacks in California. You did nothing on criminal justice reform in California. You didn't lift a finger to pass the First Step Act on Capitol Hill. I mean, the reality is your record speaks for itself. President Trump and I have fought for criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice President.
We fought for educational choice and opportunities for African Americans, all of our members.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll do it for 4 months.
Thank you. You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of time.
I appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency.
Propaganda is not answering the question.
Our
Or
agenda
debating it.
includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holds.
Thank you.
Not only,
Thank you, Senator.
I would like to go through.
These are points.
You wasted time.
And I want to talk
Sorry.
about the election itself before we have to.
But I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the first to initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias because, yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice President on our record of what we have done in terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to pose I'd like you to respond first to the question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have the support of Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power, and if we use our vote and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate,
Yes,
because clearly
yes,
Donald Trump doesn't
Pence.
think he can run on
Yes,
because it's
that's
a
what he
failure.
did.
Joe Biden
Denied all you
on
want,
stage
but
said,
no,
"Hey,
that's what he did.
just please vote." So I'll repeat what Joe said.
Go to Egypt, Pence, because you're in
Senator, Vice
denial.
President Pence, President Trump has
You're
several
drowning
times refused
in
to commit
denial.
himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If Vice President Biden is declared the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what would be your role and responsibility as Vice President? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life. And I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record
where you lost the popular
vote, revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation,
There were a lot
fighting
more
for fair
people that
trade, unleashing American
abstained.
We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement every single day. And I think that movement of Americans has only grown stronger in the last 4 years. But when you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election.
Because it was wrong.
It's amazing. When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign.
Nope.
I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche.
Because Trump is completely incompetent.
Put the country through for
unfit for his position. He should have passed a background check.
Case closed. And then Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach the President of the United States.
Because he violated the Constitution and committed treason.
Has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the
Constantly
election.
lying to the people.
Let me just say, I think we're going to win this election.
No.
President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud. We have a free and fair election. We know we're going to have confidence in it. And I believe in all my heart that President Donald Trump's going to be reelected for 4 more years.
You know, I've written all
Really
the questions
scary.
I've asked tonight, but for
Look
the
at it.
final question of the debate, I got to.
He's able to make the insanity sound insane.
The Utah Debate Commission
But it's still
has students
insane.
in the state
He's still
to write
disgusting
essays
and
about what
wrong.
they would like to ask you. And I want to close tonight's debate with the
It's
question
still
posed by
fascism.
Brooklyn
It's
Brown.
still
She's an 8th
un-American,
grader at Springville Junior High in
anti-freedom,
Springville,
and
Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "When I watch the news, all I see is
constitutional
arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all
We're
I see
coming
are
up
two
on another
candidates from
civil
opposing
war.
parties
And it's
trying to tear
unfortunate.
each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the
Means
citizens supposed to get along?"
people
And then
killing
she added,
people.
"Your
Killing.
examples
Means
could make all the difference
legalize
to bring
murder.
us together," end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And let me just
Republicans that told us, accused us of not being able to
I
with a
started
different opinion.
following the news when I was very young.
When they
And in America,
lose, they're going to turn to
we believe in a free and open exchange of debate. And we celebrate that. And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. And I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States. One very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing is the two of them and their families were the very closest of friends.
Yeah.
I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight.
Yes.
But when the debate is over,
Yeah,
we
Scalia
come
had some
together as
problems,
Americans.
but
And that's what people
also
do
has some
in
good
big
ideas.
cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. And the American people each and every day love a good debate. We love a good argument. But we always come together and are always there for one another.
Thank you,
in
Vice
times of
President.
need. And we've especially learned that
Thank you,
through the
Vice President.
difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris,
No.
what would you say to Brecklin?
We're not coming together on
First of all,
COVID.
I love hearing from our young leaders.
We did for
And when I
9/11.
hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin,
But-
I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be that is a sign of leadership and is something we should inspire.
I'm too stressed out.
And
That's
that,
why
you know,
I'm
that
still
brings me to
having
Joe.
seizures
Joe
despite
Biden.
smoking weed.
One of the reasons that Joe decided to
Still
run
in this seizure.
for president is after Charlottesville,
Still
which we talked
locked
about
up
earlier.
here.
It so troubled him and upset him like it
My
did all
hand.
of us. That there was
Like,
that
I'm
kind
partial,
of hate
but my
and
hand
division.
is still
What
seized.
propelled Joe to run
Barely,
for
I cannot
president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan
Yeah.
way.
True.
And that's what he's going to do as president.
True.
Joe Biden has
He is very
history
much a centrist.
of lifting people up and fighting for their dignity. I mean, you have to know Joe's story to know that Joe has known pain. He has
No,
known
he
suffering.
lifts people up, he edifies, whereas Trump degrades.
And so, Brecklin, when you
Trump
think about
insults
the future,
anybody that's different.
I do believe the future is bright. And it will be because of your leadership.
And demands
And it will
loyalty.
be because we
And if
fight for each
you don't have
person's
that
voice
unwavering
through their
loyalty,
vote, and we get engaged
you're
in
scum
this election
trash.
because you have the ability through your work and through eventually your vote to
He's
determine
disgusting.
the future of our country and what its leadership looks like.
Pence is
Thank you,
disgusting.
Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also the University of Utah for its hospitality, and most of all, our thanks to all the Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on October 15th, a town hall style debate in Miami. We hope you'll join us then. Good evening.
Chaotic in a different way.
And that concludes the first and only vice presidential debate from Utah, in which we know that the plexiglass in between them did not stop the interruptions of either the moderator or the candidates. Kamala Harris coming out strong in the beginning.
Hey, okay, he's got his mask on. She's taken hers off.
Was the greatest failure
See,
of any
they're not wearing the
administration
mask there.
in the history of our country.
It's supposed to be. He is doing so. He's doing so rightly now. Backwards.
Is what the administration has already done. Joining me here, John Dickerson, Gail King. I want to get each of your take, John.
Well, I think
let's see how they react to this.
The Trump-Pence campaign was in a difficult spot. The polls are going in the wrong direction. Joe Biden is competing in states where Donald Trump should have it locked up. Donald Trump is personally sick and had a bad first debate. So in that environment, Mike Pence did well. His boss will be happy. You mentioned the interruptions. They were mostly
It's just disgusting.
Entirely on the Pence side, but he did a kind of slow jazz version of interruption as opposed to Donald Trump's version. And he didn't answer, as they'll teach you in debate school, you answer the question you want to, not the one that's asked. The question is whether his performance keeping the issue on the economy, attacking Joe Biden, all of which may have scored him points in the nanosecond. The Biden campaign had a helper on the stage, two pieces of plexiglass, which are there because of the ongoing pandemic. And that is the bigger story that exists outside of this debate stage tonight. And so that is something we need to keep in mind when we think about the debate and the larger story going on.
And many people are wondering why Mike
Yeah,
Pence was
well,
even on the stage.
if you've
you're not even supposed to be
watched through this,
when you've been exposed to someone who has coronavirus, which we know the president does. But I thought Susan Page set the tone very early when she said, listen, the American people deserve to have a
be respectful in the comments.
They deserve to have a civilized conversation, which I thought for the most part we did. But a couple of times, many times, I kept thinking, I wish there were thought bubbles so we could see what they were each thinking, because many times, more on Mike Pence's side, I have to say, where he didn't answer the question, he would pivot to something else. There was at one point where Kamala, when he was asked a question directly about social distancing, and at the White House, Rose Garden, and you could see Kamala's face like, yeah, now what are you going to say? At one point when they were talking about
social media, however long.
Interesting timing, but a fly would land on Mike Pence's head at that particular time when he said that there really wasn't systemic racism. I saw the fly basically go and say, what? I mean, it was very interesting. That was I don't know how that a highlight, but that was certainly a memorable moment.
So I do know what I'm talking about most of the time. There are some things
that she asked, if you all can't get along, how can we get along? I think that's a very important question.
But Mike Pence was masterful. You may not agree with anything this administration does, but in terms of his debating style, he repeatedly did not answer the question that was posed to him about the record
stuff
of the Trump
that
administration.
I remember things that
he pivoted and used the time to deliver a direct attack against Joe Biden's long record in Washington. And I was stunned because I thought that Kamala Harris, the former prosecutor and skilled debater, from many of the primaries, would be able to make sure that it was the Trump
record that was on defense. And many times,
Realize that I'm wrong. I will admit
I
to
think
being
she
wrong.
was trying to follow the rules, though. I mean, I think she was paying attention to uninterrupted conversation, keep on your time cues, and he did not do that.
So the question is, and sometimes in these debates, it's just the turf you own is more important than whether your answer makes any sense. And Mike Pence was very good, particularly in the economic section, talking about taxes and trade. If only the candidate at the top of the ticket had the discipline that he has. And that's the trouble and always been the challenge for the Trump campaign. We can talk to Reince Priebus about that.
Inner server is far better than trying to do something with Squarespace. A lot of people talk about Squarespace, but
Is
Squarespace.
assertion what is needed for the campaign, or is persuasion? He can assert to the crowd that they've already got, but the president
$5
needs
a
to do
month
well with the voters he's
versus
been shedding.
$15 a month,
And you can't do that just with
and
assertion.
unlimited storage versus very limited storage.
Pence interrupted Senator Kamala Harris twice as
I-
often. She interrupted her. The vice president interrupted Senator Kamala Harris 10 times during this debate, when suburban women are certainly a key constituency. Does that matter, or the content of
Media
what was said?
Wiki,
Certainly in this
which
debate
is a
was that issue. I wanna bring in
Wikipedia
Nicole
type
Killian.
thing.
I think people understand if you
Blogs,
can finish a thought.
vlogs,
I think everybody gets it.
chats,
But many times
forums,
he
all
finished that
kinds
thought and then
of
kept going. Three times I was thinking, this is a very long 2 minutes. Very long 2 minutes that is happening here.
Right, but he interrupted her.
Yes,
is the
I heard
there.
him. I heard him.
Let's bring in Nicole Killian, who is at the debate site. And Nicole, your take.
Well, look, I think it was interesting from a number of standpoints.
I'm in an RV.
A moment
This is
came
my
towards the
RV.
end of the debate where the
It's a
senator
95
did not
mini
answer
mini.
the question with regard to the issue of court packing. That is something that we saw in last week's debate as well, when the former vice president was pressed on that issue in light of the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett and whether or not Democrats, if
I
they
am
are
against
to win in
fossil
the election,
fuels,
if
yet
they
I
would then
got a
try
gas
to
mask.
pack the court, depending on how this all plays out. And so this is actually something that I put to her chief of staff earlier today, if we would get a clear answer from the senator on this. And
They took out the
clearly, she
catalytic
did not.
converter
She did stand
or
her
something.
ground on the issue of race when that came up. She was very clear as far as calling out that moment last week with the president when he did not denounce white supremacy. Also really taking the vice president to task on the
Maybe
issue of the
someday
pandemic. I did
we'll
speak
get
to
this
one
thing
of her close
remodeled
friends towards the
and
end of the debate who said she believes that
go
the
get
senator
something
displayed
else.
true leadership tonight.
All right,
But,
Nicole Killian there. That's right. The vice president,
yeah,
Biden
like
and Kamala
with
Harris
the,
has repeatedly not wanted to answer that question for obvious reasons. But
oh,
actually, what's surprising is that Kamala Harris
darn it,
did
that
use the
didn't
time
work.
to pivot
Tried to
and
move my
attack the
arm.
record of Amy Coney Barrett. Those hearings are going to begin next week. There's a
Back
lot
in the
that certainly Democrats and liberals disagree with her record, and she didn't do that. But Pence did a job of
Yeah, like I
propping her up.
said, I've been
There is a
doing this
report
for
already
almost
on a number of
19
issues and
years.
really throwing it back at the Democrats. This is Paula, who
3
covers
more
the White
days,
House. She
and only
joins us now from
19 years.
quarantine after being potentially exposed to coronavirus while working at the White House. Paula, you follow this
Yes,
campaign
of
very
course.
closely. Your thoughts?
The Trump-Pence campaign
Ouch.
does not want this election to be a referendum on its handling of COVID. And you saw it here in the debate from the very first question. The vice president was on the defensive, trying to put the administration's handling of this pandemic in a positive light. As you noted, Senator Harris described it as a historic failure. Well, the vice president defended the response, saying they always put the health of Americans first. He also made a series of false statements. For example, he said that the administration banned all travel from China at the beginning of the pandemic. That is not true. He was also asked about a ceremony in the Rose Garden several days ago that now looks like it was likely a super spreader event. He also said that that was mostly an outdoor event, when in fact there were large parts of it that were indoors. No masks, no social distancing.
Paula Reed, thank you.
I thought that was a very interesting exchange, because I thought we heard for the first time when Mike Pence was asked to explain, it doesn't seem like you at the White House are following your own guidelines. And he said, well, we leave it up to the American people. We tell them what needs to be done, and then we leave it up to the American people to make their own judgment and to make their own decisions. I thought even
Come
in that moment,
watch
I thought that
my,
was deflecting.
check out my other
You're not
videos
answering
that
the
are
question.
not
You're
political.
not following your own rules.
You know, it's interesting what we learn about the things they didn't answer, the questions they didn't answer. So Kamala Harris
I guess I
didn't
have
answer the
one
question
other
about
that
pork packing. She also didn't answer
I
the question
did
about
the
what California
presidential
should do if
debate,
the goes away. Mike Pence
managed
also
to
didn't answer
successfully
that question.
live stream
Didn't answer
that
the
and
question
had
about
a
president's
better
health records.
location.
And
But
most important to people who really care about the issues, he didn't answer the question about pre-existing conditions. He said the president has a health care plan. The president has been announcing a becoming health care plan for his entire administration.
It didn't work out.
To arrive.
Yes.
And so you can tell sometimes something about them by what they don't talk about.
I want to also bring in our panel. Reince Priebus is a CBS News political analyst and President Trump's first chief of staff, and Valerie Jarrett, who is senior advisor to President Barack Obama. Valerie, let me start with you on how this debate played out. How do you think Senator Harris did?
I think she was very effective, Nora, at prosecuting the case, making it clear how the
thanks for sticking around. If you did,
COVID-19 response to the economy, to foreign policy.
hope you enjoyed that. Let's have a great discussion.
His health records, to his taxes. I think she did a really good job of both prosecuting the case, which she's very effective at,
I
but
gotta
also stating affirmatively
gotta
what
get
the Biden Harris administration would do. She did it with passion. She did it with humanity. I think she was personable. She was very comfortable in that space, and she kind of owned the room.
I have videos of my seizures and my other seizures. Chuck.
Not follow the rules again. You say, okay, in debate you don't answer the questions, but I think people were listening really closely to his answer, and he used his time to either go back to previous questions or to answer the question he wanted to answer.
YouTube. And 1 year with my RV.
I did not yell at the television set as much as I did last week, so I think my blood pressure tonight was a better night. And I'm sorry we don't get a second one. I would have enjoyed seeing the two of them at it again. I do wish that Vice President Pence had been more respectful.
September 27th is my YouTube anniversary.
Her as much. She did check him quite effectively when he did, and as only she can do.
I want to bring in Reince Priebus, who also served
catch you on the flip side in the chaos of your existence.
I know you talked to Republican strategists a lot. We have two national polls that show the Biden ticket leading by more than double digits. You see the Biden team up big in Pennsylvania. Ohio, it's tied. The Biden ticket up